Success terrifies you. Not the failure you're used to that, but the actual success? It terrifies you at a level you don't consciously recognize. Someone offers you a huge opportunity, your stomach tightens. A path opens to significant wealth, you find reasons to not take it. You're close to a breakthrough, you sabotage it. And you think, I must just be unlucky, or, I'm not ready yet, or, it's not the right time. But here's the brutal truth you don't want to face. You're not unlucky. You're afraid. Deeply, unconsciously afraid of what success and wealth would mean. And fear always wins. Fear keeps you exactly where you are. Safe. Poor. Stuck. Welcome to the 6th episode of The 7 Unconscious Blocks to Wealth. In previous episodes, we talked about inability to receive, destructive comparison, neurotic control, limiting financial identity, and unconscious spending habits. Today we're going deep into perhaps the most hidden and most powerful block of all, the unconscious fear of wealth. Using Carl Jung's understanding of the shadow and unconscious fears, we're going to expose why part of you actively doesn't want to be rich. And until you face this fear and integrate it, you'll stay exactly where you are. No matter how hard you work. Carl Jung understood something profound about fear that most people completely miss. He said the things we fear most aren't usually the things we consciously acknowledge fearing. The deepest fears live in the shadow, the unconscious part of the psyche where we've pushed everything we can't consciously accept about ourselves. And one of the most common shadow fears, especially in people who struggle financially, is the fear of actually succeeding. The fear of wealth. The fear of becoming the person they say they want to become but unconsciously believe they can't be or shouldn't be. Think about it. If someone asked you, do you want to be wealthy? You'd consciously say yes. Of course you want wealth. Who wouldn't? But if we could access your unconscious, if we could ask your shadow, the answer might be completely different. Your shadow might say, absolutely not. Wealth is dangerous. Wealth changes people. Wealth brings problems I can't handle. Wealth means I'd lose myself. Better to stay poor and safe than rich and lost. And here's the devastating part. The unconscious always wins. Your conscious desires mean nothing if your unconscious fears are stronger. You can want wealth consciously all you want. But if you fear it unconsciously, you'll sabotage every opportunity to achieve it. Your unconscious will find creative ways to keep you exactly where its fear says you belong. Poor and safe. Let me tell you about Jennifer. Jennifer grew up in a working-class neighborhood in Philadelphia. Parents worked regular jobs, paycheck to paycheck, but stable. Jennifer internalized a deep belief: we're regular people. We don't get rich. That's not who we are. Not explicitly stated, but lived daily. Jennifer became a talented graphic designer. Had opportunities to go freelance, charge premium rates, potentially make $150,000 to $200,000 annually. But every time she got close to making the leap, something happened. She'd get sick. She'd doubt her abilities. She'd convince herself she needed more training first. She'd find reasons why now isn't the right time. Years passed. Jennifer stayed at her corporate job making $55,000, constantly complaining about wanting more money but never taking the opportunities that presented themselves. In therapy, exploring this pattern, the therapist asked, "What's the scariest thing about actually succeeding as a freelancer making $200,000? Jennifer's immediate response was defensive. Nothing. That would be amazing. That's what I want. But the therapist pushed, close your eyes. Imagine it's real. You're making $200,000. You're successful. You're that person. What do you feel? And Jennifer started crying. Because what she felt was terror. Terror that she'd become someone her family wouldn't recognize. Terror that she'd be alone in a world her parents never accessed. Terror that success would fundamentally change who she was and she'd lose the connection to where she came from. Jung would say Jennifer had a shadow fear of success and wealth. Consciously she wanted it. But unconsciously, she feared it would mean losing her identity, her family connection, her sense of belonging to her community. And the unconscious fear was stronger than the conscious desire. So her psyche sabotaged every opportunity, keeping her in familiar poverty rather than terrifying wealth. Now let's talk about the different forms this fear takes. Because it's not always obvious. It disguises itself. It rationalizes. It makes itself look like something other than fear. Let me walk you through the most common manifestations. Fear manifestation number 1, I'm not ready yet. This is when you perpetually feel you need more preparation before you can succeed. More training, more certification, more experience, more knowledge. You're always one more thing away from being ready. But that one more thing never makes you feel ready. Because it's not about actual readiness. It's about unconscious fear disguised as prudent preparation. The pattern is, opportunity arises. Instead of taking it, you think, I need to prepare more. You take another course, get another certification, read more books, wait for more experience. But when the next opportunity comes, you still don't feel ready. More preparation needed. It's an infinite loop of preparation that never leads to action. Because the real issue isn't readiness. It's fear of what happens if you actually try and actually succeed. Let me tell you about David. David wanted to start a consulting business in his field, organizational psychology. He had 20 years of corporate experience, a PhD, extensive expertise. Objectively, he was more than qualified. But David spent 5 years preparing to start. Took business courses. Got additional certifications. Read hundreds of books on consulting. Attended conferences. Networked. But never actually started the business. Friends would ask, when are you going to launch? David would say, soon, I just need to finish this one more certification, or, I want to make sure I'm really ready before I take the leap. 5 years of this. 5 years of preparation with zero action. In therapy, the question that broke through was, what if you're already ready and you're just afraid? David got defensive, I'm not afraid. I just want to do it right. But then the therapist asked, what's the worst thing that could happen if you start now? And David's real fear came out. What if I fail and everyone sees I'm not as good as they think I am? What if I try and I'm just average? What if success doesn't come and everyone knows I wasn't special after all? Beneath the I'm not ready yet was fear of being exposed as inadequate. Fear that trying would reveal he wasn't as capable as he believed. So his unconscious kept him in perpetual preparation, which protected him from ever having to risk finding out if he could actually succeed. Preparation felt safe. Action felt terrifying. Jung would say David was protecting his ego from potential wounding through maintaining provisional life. As long as he was preparing, he could maintain the fantasy that he'd be successful once he started. But starting risked discovering the fantasy wasn't reality. So the unconscious kept him preparing forever, safe in potential, never risking actual achievement or actual failure. Fear manifestation number 2. Who am I to be successful? This is the fear of not deserving success. The belief, usually unconscious, that people like you don't get to be wealthy or successful. That there's something about your background, your family, your identity that makes success not for you. It's the impostor syndrome taken to shadow level. The pattern is, opportunity comes. You think, this can't be for me. People like me don't get opportunities like this. There must be a mistake. I don't belong here. And you self-reject before anyone else can reject you. You disqualify yourself preemptively because unconsciously you believe you don't deserve to be in the room where success happens. Let me tell you about Maria. Maria grew up in a poor immigrant family in Los Angeles. Parents worked labor jobs, no education, struggled constantly. Maria got full scholarship to Stanford, graduated top of her class, got job offers from McKinsey and Goldman Sachs, opportunities to enter the highest levels of business and potentially become very wealthy. And Maria turned them down. Took a lower-paying job at a nonprofit instead. When friends asked why, she said, I want to do meaningful work, not just make money. Which sounded noble. But in therapy, the deeper truth emerged. Maria felt she didn't belong in those elite spaces. Who am I to work at Goldman Sachs? That's for kids who went to prep schools whose parents are wealthy. Not for someone like me. I'd be exposed as not really belonging there. Maria's fear wasn't just about capability. It was about identity. She unconsciously believed that success at that level was for a different kind of person. And becoming that person would mean betraying where she came from, becoming someone she wasn't supposed to be. So she self-rejected from opportunities that terrified her, staying in a comfortable lower-income space that felt more authentic to who she believed she was allowed to be. Jung would say Maria was trapped between two archetypal identities: the poor immigrant daughter, authentic, safe, known, and the successful professional, inauthentic, terrifying, unknown. Her ego identified with the first. Taking the high-level opportunities would require shifting to the second identity. And that shift felt like death of self. So her unconscious rejected the opportunities to preserve identity coherence, even though that meant staying financially limited. Fear manifestation number 3, money corrupts people. This is when you unconsciously believe that wealth is morally dangerous, that becoming rich would make you a bad person, that there's inherent virtue in poverty and inherent corruption in wealth. So your unconscious keeps you poor to keep you good. The pattern is, you see wealthy people and focus on the ones who are greedy, selfish, corrupt. You ignore wealthy people who are generous and ethical. You build a mental model where wealth equals moral degradation. And unconsciously, you fear that if you became wealthy, you'd become that kind of person. So you sabotage wealth to protect your moral identity. Let me tell you about Robert. Robert grew up with parents who constantly criticized wealthy people. Rich people are greedy. You can't get rich without stepping on people. Money changes people for the worse. We may not have much, but at least we're honest. Robert internalized, being poor equals being good. Being rich equals being bad. Robert became a lawyer. Had opportunities to join high-paying firms or start lucrative practice, but consistently chose lower-paying public interest work. When questioned, he'd say, "I believe in justice, not profit," which sounded principled. But beneath it was unconscious fear. If I make a lot of money, I'll become one of those greedy lawyers I despise. I'll lose my moral center. I'll become corrupt. So Robert kept himself poor to keep himself good. His unconscious equated poverty with virtue and wealth with moral compromise. And he'd rather be poor and good than rich and corrupted. But here's the thing, this was false dichotomy. Plenty of wealthy people maintain integrity. Plenty of poor people lack it. Wealth doesn't determine morality. But Robert's unconscious didn't know that. It operated on the simple equation absorbed in childhood. Poor equals good, rich equals bad. Jung would say Robert was projecting his own shadow onto wealthy people. He saw in them the greed and selfishness he feared existed in himself. And by staying poor, he could deny those shadow qualities existed in him. Wealth would force him to confront whether he could maintain integrity with resources. That confrontation was too terrifying. Poverty kept him safe from having to find out. Fear manifestation number 4, success will isolate me. This is the fear that becoming successful and wealthy will mean losing connection with the people you love. That your family and friends won't relate to you anymore. That you'll be alone in your success. That the price of wealth is loneliness. The pattern is, you imagine succeeding significantly, and immediately feel anxiety about what it would mean for your relationships. My friends who are still struggling, will they resent me? Will they feel I abandoned them? Will we still have anything in common? The fear of isolation and loss of belonging overrides the desire for success. Let me tell you about James. James came from tight-knit working-class family in Detroit. Everyone still lived in same neighborhood, saw each other constantly, had deep bonds forged through shared struggle. James got opportunity to take a job across country that would triple his income and open doors to significant wealth. And he turned it down. When asked why, James said, "Family is more important than money." True on surface. But in therapy, the deeper fear emerged. If I move away and become really successful, will I still belong with my family? Will we still understand each other? Will they see me as the guy who left them behind? Will I be alone in my success without the people who actually know me? James feared success would mean choosing between wealth and belonging. And he chose belonging. But here's the tragedy, he could have had both. His family might have been proud and supportive. Or he could have maintained connection while also succeeding. But he never found out. Because the fear of potential isolation was strong enough to make him reject the opportunity entirely. Jung would say James was experiencing the conflict between individuation, becoming fully himself, and participation mystique, unconscious identification with group. Success would require individuation, separating from collective family identity and becoming his distinct self. But that felt like betrayal and abandonment. So his unconscious chose collective belonging over individual achievement. Fear manifestation number 5. I can't handle the responsibility. This is the fear that wealth brings problems and responsibilities you won't be able to manage. That being successful means having to deal with complexity you can't handle. That poverty is simpler and therefore safer. The pattern is, you imagine having significant wealth, and immediately feel overwhelmed by imagined complications. I'd have to manage investments, I don't know how to do that. People would ask me for money, I wouldn't know how to say no. I'd have to make bigger decisions, what if I make wrong ones? The fear of responsibility becomes reason to avoid the wealth that would bring it. Let me tell you about Lisa. Lisa had opportunity to join startup as early employee with significant equity. If successful, she could have made millions. But Lisa declined. Her reasoning, that's too much uncertainty and risk. I need stability. But in therapy, the real fear emerged. What if the startup succeeds and suddenly I have millions of dollars? I don't know how to handle that. I'd have to make decisions about investing, about what to do with it. People would ask for help. I'd have so much responsibility. What if I mess it all up? Better to not have it than to have it and fail to handle it properly. Lisa was more afraid of the problems of wealth than the problems of poverty. She knew how to manage being broke, she'd done it her whole life. But managing wealth? That was unknown and terrifying. So her unconscious chose the familiar discomfort of poverty over the unfamiliar discomfort of wealth. Jung would say Lisa's ego lacked confidence in its capacity to manage expanded reality. Wealth would expand her reality, more options, more decisions, more complexity. Her ego, not trusting it could handle that expansion, chose to keep reality small and manageable. Poverty kept life simple. Wealth would make it complex. And complex felt overwhelming. Fear manifestation number 6. I might lose it all. This is the fear that if you achieve wealth, you'll eventually lose it and the loss will be more painful than never having it. Better to never rise than to rise and fall. Better to stay poor consistently than to taste wealth and return to poverty. The pattern is, you see someone who was wealthy and lost it. And your unconscious focuses on the pain of the loss, imagining how devastating that would be. What if I get rich and then lose it all in a market crash? In a bad investment? Through being scammed? The fall would destroy me. Better to never climb high so I can't fall far. Let me tell you about Marcus. Marcus had multiple opportunities to start businesses with high potential, but always found reasons to not pursue them. The stated reason was too risky. But the deeper fear, revealed in therapy, what if it succeeds initially, I get used to having money, build a lifestyle around it, and then it all collapses? I've seen people lose everything. The shame, the devastation. I couldn't handle that. Better to stay at my mediocre job where I know what to expect. Marcus was more afraid of potential loss than excited by potential gain. His risk assessment was entirely focused on downside. The unconscious fear of falling was stronger than conscious desire to rise. So he stayed on ground level, safe from falling but never rising. Jung would say Marcus was dominated by fear archetype. The terrible mother archetype, protection through restriction. Better to never leave the safe womb of familiar poverty than venture into dangerous world of wealth where loss is possible. The ego chose safety over possibility. Fear manifestation number 7. Success will change who I am. This is the deepest fear, that wealth and success will fundamentally transform your identity and you'll lose yourself in the process. That you'll become a different person and won't like who you become. That staying poor keeps you authentic while getting rich would make you fake. The pattern is, you have a core sense of who you are. And you unconsciously believe that wealth is incompatible with that identity. I'm a simple person, wealth would make me complicated. I'm humble, wealth would make me arrogant. I'm grounded, wealth would make me out of touch. So you keep yourself poor to keep yourself, you. Let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah was an artist, deeply committed to her creative authenticity. Had opportunities to commercialize her art in ways that could have made her wealthy, but refused them all. I don't want to sell out. I create for art's sake, not for money. Commercializing would corrupt my creative process. In therapy, what if you could maintain artistic integrity and make good money? Sarah's response revealed the fear, but would I? Money changes people. I've seen artists become commercial and lose what made them special. I'm afraid that if I started making real money from art, I'd start creating what sells rather than what's true. I'd lose myself. Better to stay poor and authentic than rich and fake. Sarah equated poverty with authenticity and wealth with corruption of self. Her unconscious fear was that success would kill the artist she was and create someone she wouldn't respect. So she chose poverty to preserve identity. Jung would say Sarah was protecting the self from perceived contamination by the persona. She feared that wealth would force her to live for external validation, persona, rather than internal truth, self. But this was false dichotomy. She could have maintained self-directed creativity while also receiving financial compensation. But her unconscious couldn't see that possibility. It saw only poor and authentic or rich and corrupted. How these fears work together. Here's what makes this block so powerful. These fears compound and reinforce each other. You're not ready yet, fear number 1, because you're afraid of who you'd become, fear number 7. You don't feel you deserve it, fear number 2, and you fear isolation, fear number 4. You believe money corrupts, fear number 3, and you can't handle responsibility, fear number 5. All these fears weave together, creating an impenetrable web of unconscious resistance to wealth. And because they're unconscious, you don't see them as fears. They disguise themselves as practical concerns, moral principles, self-awareness, risk management. They make themselves look like wisdom when they're actually terror. Your ego tells you, I'm being prudent, when your shadow is actually screaming, I'm terrified. The path forward, facing the fear. So how do you break through this? How do you overcome unconscious fear of wealth? Jung would say, you must bring the fear into consciousness. You must face it, acknowledge it, examine it, and ultimately integrate it. First step, honest self-examination. Go through those 7 fear manifestations. Which ones do you recognize in yourself? Don't dismiss them. Don't rationalize them away. Just notice, yes, I do feel I'm not ready yet, or yes, I do fear success will isolate me. Naming the fear is the beginning of defanging it. Second step, trace the fear's origin. Where did it come from? What messages did you absorb growing up? What beliefs about wealth did your family hold? What models did you see? Understanding the source helps you see the fear isn't absolute truth, it's learned pattern. Third step, question the fear. Is it based on reality or assumption? Will I really lose myself if I become wealthy? Or is that fear based on limited examples and childhood programming? Will I really become corrupt? Or can I be wealthy and maintain integrity? Challenge the automatic assumptions the fear is built on. Fourth step, create new models. Find examples of people who achieved wealth without becoming what you fear. Wealthy people who maintained authenticity. Successful people who kept relationships. Rich people who stayed ethical. New models prove the fear's predictions aren't inevitable. Fifth step, small exposure. You don't overcome fear through analysis alone. You overcome it through graduated exposure. Take small steps toward success. See what actually happens. Does it match your fear's predictions? Usually it doesn't. Each small step that doesn't result in catastrophe weakens the fear's power. Let me tell you about Amanda because her story shows transformation is possible. Amanda had all 7 fears. Brilliant woman, MBA from Northwestern, but working administrative job making $45,000 despite capabilities that could earn $150,000 plus. Every opportunity for advancement she found reason to not pursue. Hit crisis point when realized she was 40, financially struggling, deeply unfulfilled. Went into Jungian therapy specifically to explore what was blocking her. Spent year working through it. Identified all the fears. Saw how they came from her family, parents who struggled and resented wealthy people. Recognized the fears were protecting her from imagined dangers, not real ones. Started small. Applied for job 1 level up. Got it. Survived, didn't lose herself, didn't become corrupt, didn't lose relationships. Applied for next level. Got that? Each success without catastrophe weakened the fears. Gradually built confidence that she could succeed without the disasters her unconscious predicted. 5 years later, Amanda was director at tech company making $180,000. More importantly, she was happy. Hadn't lost herself. Hadn't become the corrupt wealthy person she feared. Maintained integrity. Kept real friendships. Handled the responsibility fine. All the fears proved false. But she only discovered that by facing them and moving forward despite them. Jung would say Amanda underwent individuation in relation to success and wealth. Separated from collective family beliefs about money. Integrated the shadow fears rather than being controlled by them. Became fully herself, including the successful, wealthy aspect her unconscious had been rejecting. The deepest truth. Here's what Jung would want you to understand. These fears exist for a reason. At some point they protected you. Maybe keeping yourself poor protected you from family resentment. Maybe staying small kept you safe from exposure. Maybe avoiding wealth meant avoiding complexity you weren't ready to handle as a child. But you're not a child anymore. And what protected you then might now be imprisoning you. The fears that once served you might now be limiting you. And you have the power to examine them, challenge them, and choose differently. Your fear of wealth is not truth. It's fear. And fear, when brought to consciousness and faced directly, loses its power. But fear that remains unconscious controls everything. If this video resonated, if you recognized yourself afraid of the very success you claim to want, I need you to do something. First, leave your like. This helps more people find this crucial message. Second, in comments, answer honestly. Which of these 7 fear manifestations do you most recognize in yourself? Naming it begins the process of overcoming it. And third, subscribe because this is episode 6 of The 7 Unconscious Blocks to Wealth. We've covered inability to receive, comparison, control, identity, habits, and today fear. Next week, episode 7, the finale, the get-rich-quick lie and why chasing shortcuts guarantees you'll stay poor. But until then, practice. Practice honest self-examination of your fears. Practice questioning whether they're based on reality or assumption. Practice taking small steps toward success despite the fear. Practice proving to yourself that you can handle what you've been afraid of. Because here's the truth, you're more capable than your fears believe. The disasters your unconscious predicts probably won't happen. And even if they do, you can handle them. But you'll never know if you let fear keep you trapped in safe poverty. You don't have wealth problem. You have fear problem. And fear, unlike external circumstances, is something you can actually work with. You can examine it, question it, challenge it, overcome it. But first you have to acknowledge it exists. Your unconscious fear of wealth has kept you poor. Not circumstances. Not luck. Not lack of opportunity. Fear. But fear brought to consciousness loses its power. Fear faced directly dissolves. And on the other side of that fear is everything you say you want. Success, wealth, abundance, freedom. The only way out is through. Face the fear. Name it. Understand it. Challenge it. And then move forward despite it. One small step at a time, proving to yourself that success won't destroy you, won't change you in the ways you fear, won't bring the catastrophes your unconscious predicts. You're afraid to be rich. But that fear is lying to you. Challenge it. And discover you were capable of success all along. Your unconscious just needed permission to believe it. Give yourself that permission. Face the fear. And claim the prosperity waiting on the other side.
If this resonated with you, subscribe to the Shadow Dialogue and hit that like button. Your transformation starts with one click. See you in the next video.